Good morning, Brazil. Good afternoon, Canary Island. And good evening, India. First of all, happy Pride Day. Today is a special day for those who, like us, no, who fight against LGBT phobia. Pride Day is about acceptance, equality, celebrating the work of LGBT people, educating in LGBT plus history, and raising awareness of the issues affecting the LGBT community. It's about rights, it's equity. We think this interview also celebrates our ways of being and feeling that go beyond Western normative and capitalist pride, because after all, trans and racialized people have always been at the front of this battlefield. So it seems such an opportunity for grasping into other queer realities. Now I pass the word to Mariana to say a few words about our association and our monthly lives.
Yes, so Sukhdeep, we are very, before we present our guest, I'm sorry if the internet is not perfect here in Brazil. So before we present you, Sukhdeep, I just want to say a few words about our association. Now, Brazil-India Association of Network of Associations on India. So the association's aim is to address and disseminate various topics related to India and Indian studies. So we aim to present a dialogue between Indian like civilization, this ancient culture, and Indian nation state. We aim, Sukhdeep, to create this space of dialogue with voices like other than mainstream Hinduism, and we know, like for our own researches and for what we talk and the people we see and do, like there is a lot of narratives that are always crossing this huge stereotype of yoga and vegetarianism. So what are those narratives that are crossing and confronting this big stereotype? So that's our aim, like contemporary Indian society, creating a space for these narratives to present themselves to a Brazilian audience and to create a dialogue with that. So your contribution to us today is amazing, because there is a huge field of debate here in Brazil that could dialogue with things you are bringing to, but they are mainly unknown here in Brazil. Now, so we are really glad, and that's what we do, and we keep doing that right here for the past 6 years. That's Brindark. So, in the name of Brindark, we thank you so much for joining us and for sharing with us your documentary and your ideas. And we have a lot of things to talk, and I hope we have a good hour together. Sukhdeep, Jairo, and Rejani, and everybody who's watching us.
I'll subscribe everything Mariana has said. I mean, your documentary is so sensibly done, so beautifully portrayed, and I loved it. Because me, although I am from Africa, me living in Europe, belonging to a European country, it amazes me every single time that I hear from all the different stories and all the experiences of being, LGBT in other parts of the world. So thank you very much. So we are excited actually to have you here, Sukhdeep. Sukhdeep Singh, for those who don't know him, he is a software engineer, currently based in Delhi. He idolized and produced this documentary. Sorry, my language, Sab Rab De Bande. You will pronounce it that better, of course. So we'll be launching our debate around this thought-provoking documentary, which explores the intersection and distances resulted from being queer and religious in the state of Punjab, mostly. So, Sukhdeep, if you want to say something more about you, that escapes me. So the room is yours.
Thank you so much. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all and break in Mariana, Regina, and Jairo for inviting me and for saying those lovely words about the documentary. I'm so glad that all of you loved the documentary and found it useful. A little introduction, more introduction about myself, maybe I can give that. So I was born and brought up in Calcutta, and I did my engineering. After which I moved to Bangalore, where I stayed for 5 years, and then I'm currently based in Delhi. So since 2010, I've also been running an online LGBTQ magazine called Galaxy in India, which is very popular here. And this documentary, which is called Sab Rab De Bande, which essentially means we are all God's children. So this is something that I conceptualized in 2016, and then I started working on it since 2017, and it took me almost 5 years to complete it over because of various reasons, which obviously we'll discuss. So yeah, that's I think that's a brief introduction for me. And once again, thank you so much for having me over here and for having this discussion on a top on this topic. Thank you.
So Mariana, we can start with your questions and then we move on to Jairo and to me. Is it okay?
Yes, of course. Sukhdeep, the questions are many, right? So we are trying to like I mean start from somewhere, but please move on. So Sukhdeep, Brazil, as I don't know, ma'am, if you know, like Brazil is the biggest Catholic country in the world, even though gradually the more Protestant groups are growing a lot here. So maybe very soon we won't be the biggest Catholic country any longer. But talking about Brazil, but maybe like expanding it like to the West and Christianity, you know, the 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 confrontation of the sexual descendants is because of a long tradition of Christian perversion. Like, so there is a disconnectivity. There is a point here that we could say, but I don't know if we can say that for everybody, right? So that there is like a problems, like concrete problems within within this bigger, and you present a different discourse, like as a group who doesn't want to break with the religious tradition, no? Which is something we see less here. No, so that brings us like that rings a bell for us here. Like, what is the relation and why is that relation so? But then, like going back to the documentary, right? We see like the people saying that within the Sikh tradition, there is hope. Like in terms like when you say like the marriage is understood as a union of genderless soul, as you mentioned in that documentary. So. But we see that there is this controversy within the Sikh community. So we wonder, like, is there something that happened within the Sikh relation at some point? I don't know if British colonialism or I don't know, some other external force that at some point faced like a change or that is this construction. So can we go back to the Sikh tradition at some point and say there it doesn't have a conflict, and this conflict is something like recent? So it's like two questions here, Sukhdeep. First is like for us in Brazil, or maybe for me, because I'm talking in a very religious country, like why is that drive for keeping the religious tradition, whereas you could just break through and say like, you don't accept me, so no. But no, let's go back to that because it's part of your life and your identity, and you don't want to break with that in order to live other identities, no. And the Sikh tradition, so it's like the question, the double question is like the community going to the religion, not breaking, which is something that we could assume that you could break. And can you say that at some point in the history of the religion there is like this this rupture, like this breaking through with something that was less aggressive towards diversity in the past, and if we can even say when and where that happened, no, something like that.
So just give me a second. I'm getting a call from Ritika, so I'll just ask her. And I'll just yeah. Sorry. Uh, yes, so you have got very pertinent questions pointed out, very pertinent questions, and I'll answer the second question first, and then get back to the first question about why people haven't broke, or in the documentary, or in my personal experience as well, why I haven't come across Sikh people who want to like break away from the religion because of their sexuality. So to answer your second question, any religion, or for that matter any community in India, is not untouched, has not been left untouched with the Victorian morality. So whether it is Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, Buddhism, or any particular religion or any community that you see in India, so because of the long rule by the British under colonialism, so we are very much influenced by those colonial thoughts, and because of these colonial thoughts, our own way of looking at things, or our own interpretation of our religion, is through a very colonial mindset. So when we say, when I say through a very colonial mindset, this mindset is especially seen when it comes to interpreting homosexuality, or how homosexuality is looked at, because we might know, like everywhere the British went, there is a law similar to Section 377 that's there, and over the long period of this occupation, or the rule that British had over India, they were able to obviously change many of our thoughts. One obviously included inclusion or acceptance of homosexual behavior, and that is the reason that today when we see, even in religions like Hinduism, where it is said that gender fluidity, or homosexuality or sexual experimentism existed for a long time, even many of the major Hindu people or Hindu religious leaders, they today are not as accepting of homosexuality, and so Sikh religion is also not left untouched. So while Sikhism, when I talk about Sikhism or Sikh philosophy, so there are some key aspects that we need to understand. So one is, unlike many other religions, especially Abrahamic religion or Christianity, there are not very strict codes within Sikhism. So Sikhism looks at religion more as a journey towards attaining spiritualism, or attaining what you may call nirvana. So there are not very strict rules that, I mean, the emphasis is not really on very strict rules that if you are not following this, God will be super angry with you or something like that. So there's no such concept of, I mean, a super angry God within Sikhism, or at least that's not how most Sikh people look at a God or their own religion. Or even in the text, Sikh text, or the Guru Granth Sahib, uh, the various hymns, they are more, so the key theme within Sikhism is about inclusion. If we look at it, the key themes is around inclusion and equality, and around these two themes there are various stories from the lives of our own Sikh gurus, where they have propagated these themes basically. So whether, if you look at it, whether you look at how the langar, or the community kitchen that was established, so there, it was established at a time when caste or untouchability was very common in India. So one of the key things about langar is that no one is untouchable. Everyone, or no one belongs to different caste over there. Every people, whether they are from different caste, from different class, whatever it is, they dine together or sit together to uh, have the food. Similarly, our gurus, they propagated equality. So whether it was equality for women's equality at a time when women were oppressed a lot, the Sikh gurus, they propagated that women, that should not be the case. That women are as equal as men, and they can partake in all services, or in all functions. So within Sikh religion itself, there are, I mean, unlike Christianity, where only a male person can be a father or a priest, there are no such strict demarcations within the Sikh religion, that a woman cannot perform so and so religious duty, or any such thing, because everyone is treated equally within the Sikh religion. And if I come towards standing up for minorities, or standing up for the rights of the oppressed, so our gurus have done that throughout their life, and have set example. One of the key is the ninth guru that we have, a Guru Tegh Bahadur. He in fact sacrificed his life to protect basically Hindus that were being oppressed by Aurangzeb at that time. And this is one of the very rare instances of any religious guru, or teacher, sacrificing his life basically to save someone from another religion. So if we look at all these different aspects of Sikhism, or how the Sikh gurus have over the years, in their own lifetime, basically propagated Sikhism. So it is basically they have tried and create a very inclusive, very equal kind of a religion, and within and even the things that they have said, or the various hymns that are there in Guru Granth Sahib. So the focus there is always at basically, it's a more of a spiritual religion, where the focus is how you can connect with God. And there are no set rules. I mean, the guru says there are no set rules basically, that you have to basically shun your life, or go to the Himalayas, or do any such thing. Within Sikhism, the gurus have said that even while leading your daily life, you can basically just keep remembering God in your thoughts, and that's enough to basically connect with God. So that's the main theme within Sikhism. And so to answer you now, coming back to your question of, then why is there such a why are the Sikh gurus, or the current set of Sikh leaders, why they take a very antagonistic viewpoint over here when it comes to homosexuality. So I would say that's mainly because of the way we have come to look at things through a very colonial lens. And so when we talk about colonial lens, one of the key things over there is it abhorred homosexuality. It looked at homosexuality or homosexual behavior as deviant. And that is the reason, and because the Sikh gurus or the Sikh texts, they are basically silent on the topic of homosexuality. So when I say they are silent on this topic, what I mean is there's nothing specific within the text or within the teachings of Sikh gurus which said that this is explicitly forbidden. This behavior is explicitly forbidden. Neither is there any particular text which is more like, okay, this which one can say kind of enables such a behavior, if I may say that. So when we are at a point where there's no clear demarcation of how things should be, I think the key aspect one should look at is how do we interpret the religion based on what are the key things or the key themes of the religion. And if we look at the key theme, which is of inclusivity, of equality, I think it becomes very apparent that the other, I mean, texts which are basically open for interpretation, then we have like two basic ways in which we can do it. We can go in a very rigid and conservative manner, or we can be open and have a very inclusive interpretation. I think it is a later one which we should basically be doing, and not looking at it through a very colonial viewpoint. Yeah. So I hope I've answered your question. And even if I talk about, if I may add over here, so while we do not have any specific text or hymns or scriptures which outrightly condemn or outrightly accept homosexuality or gender fluidity, there are various hymns or shabad that we say, which if we listen to it, or if we look at it, give it a little wider interpretation, those are very much point out that there are different people in this world, that God has basically made people in different have basically cast people in different images, and so it is very much possible that there will be diversity in this world. And there's a book which is called "I Am Divine, So Are You," which focuses on Indic religions that originated out of India, and how those religions. Basically four religions: Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and Hinduism. How they look at this topic around sexuality and gender identities. And in that book, I have also contributed a chapter. And there's a story that I came across basically, where there's this one particular story which might not be historically accurate, but it's I think it's very interesting and important to include here. Where one of the stories goes like that: Guru Nanak, who is the founder of the Sikh religion, he met a Sufi saint somewhere around, I think, Iraq or somewhere, during one of his trips, and that particular saint was dressed up um, as a woman, or rather, if I can put it, he was cross-dressed basically, and Guru Nanak and that saint have this conversation where Guru Nanak asks him, "Why are you dressed as a woman? I mean, why are you in this particular dress? Why are you cross-dressing?" And the saint says that I'm trying to basically, because God is my male lover, and I'm trying to please him through all this my dressing, this way of dressing. So Guru Nanak does not rebuke him for transgressing gender roles or anything. Instead, all that Guru Nanak in that particular interaction, supposed interaction, says is that you don't have to dress up as change your out the way you dress up outwardly to basically uh, be one with God or please God. What you are inside is basically what will please God. Although historians say that this is not a very accurate, because the saint that is supposed that Guru Nanak has this interaction with, both Guru Nanak and that saint lived in very different times periods. But I think it's very important whoever wrote this particular story, and there's also very nice illustration to go with it. So whoever the person who imagined this conversation or wrote that story or created that illustration, nowhere in that particular, and this was created somewhere, I think, around 17th century or 18th century. So nowhere at that particular point did the creator of that story think that Guru Nanak would basically rebuke or feel disgusted at this cross-dressed behavior. So I think that is a very and this is certainly pre British colonialism. So I think that this one particular story is a good indicative of how early days pre-colonialism probably this topic might have been looked at, and how this change of whole way we look at things has happened post-colonialism.
I think that's interesting this story also because you also bring another reading of Islam, no, with the Sufism also not being in the same key as the colonial British in this case, that because the Sikh religion was developed in a period where Mughal rule was in India, right? So there is a relation with Islam also. And I find it really interesting when you put that the colonialism of the Abrahamic religions, no? So it's like Islam and it's Christianism, it's both. But you also bring this Sufi tradition, which I think is important even for us to understand Islam also in its wider and not so no aggressive stereotyped image, you know, we
I
do
think
share here.
I think within Islam, there's a lot of obviously a lot of this interpretation of Islam currently is also, I'll say, influenced by colonial mindset. Because if we look at pre-colonialism, even within Islam, there was a lot of diversity, a lot of acceptance of homosexual behavior as well. So, or for that matter, most of like Sufi saints, they considered themselves as a woman while they considered the god as their male lover. And there were a lot of digression from the set gender norms, and a lot of Sufi saints, some of them even in India, were known to have a male lover, and were in fact deeply in love with their male lovers. So yeah, and even in some of the Islamic societies, I think homosexual behavior has been predominantly documented as well. So the world post colonialism is obviously different today. And if I may answer your first question as why, I mean, in contrast to probably what you see in the Western world, where if a person is probably homosexual, they basically shun their religion because they find it very incompatible, their sexuality and their religion. So to answer that, why I personally me or even those people in the documentary or even through my personal experience with among other Sikh people, why I haven't come across that, where people are basically shunning their religion, or they are having to choose between their religion and sexuality. So, as I mentioned in my answer previously as well, that within Sikhism there is no not very rigid roles or rules, if I may say, that you can only follow Sikhism if you follow this, if you are performing this particular rule, or if you're performing, or if you're leading your way only in a particular way. There's no condemnation as such, how we see within Abrahamic religion. Here I'll say Abrahamic religion, because both whether in Islam or in Christianity, how we see there are stories which are used to basically condemn homosexuality. So we do not have any such stories. Even the religious discourse that we have had so far, it focuses more on the personal journey, on improving your own self, and there is no widespread condemnation that you will hear from during in the gurudwaras or during the religious teaching. And because the focus is so much on your own personal journey, on your on a way on a spiritual connection, uh, Sikh people, they I have come across, none of them have found a conflict. Obviously, they are not comfortable coming out, which is because of the way also society in general is in India, and because there's a whole silence, or the way in which we look at things around homosexuality in India or in our society in general. But if I talk about religion, there are some conflicts people have, but they have been able to find solace within their religion, because the religion within Sikh faith, as you might have also seen in the documentary, there are various hymns, various shabads, or various texts which basically are very gender neutral, or which basically talk about a lot acceptance. And so yeah, so people have not really, and even our gurdwaras or our religious place, they are very open to almost, they're not very restrictive. It's not like if you belong to a different religion, or if you belong to a different caste, you cannot enter a gurdwara or enter our religious places. Gurdwaras are very open to everyone. And so if, as I mentioned previously, if you look at the very basic theme or foundation of Sikhism, it's about acceptance. The religious places are open to everyone. So that is probably also one of the reasons that Sikh people in particular, whether it's me or other Sikh people in the documentary or those I have come across, they have not have had this very huge conflict between their religion and their sexuality, where they have thought that I mean, shunning the religion is probably the only way they could accept themselves. I hope, yeah, I've answered you. Yeah, you are on mute, Mariana.
Jairo, would you like to move on to
Oh,
your
yeah,
some
yeah, sure.
questions too?
Yeah, sure. I thought you wanted to say something. Okay. So Sukhdeep, my question is kind of complicated because when I was watching your documentary, I mirrored so many experiences from being raised and brought up in a Catholic family, Catholic, very much Catholic centered community. So I was thinking, nowadays there are so many people out there, actually, so many LGBTQ plus people who identify themselves as Catholics. But what they've done is brilliant so far, because they have adapted this discourse and they have queerized, kind of, the Catholic discourse. For example, they have appropriated the aesthetics, and you will see drag queens, for example, here dancing as a Virgin Mary, dress up as a Virgin Mary, or as Jesus Christ, for example. Or even they have created LGBT Catholic groups that are safe, from this homophobia that comes with being Catholic and Christian. So I was wondering, because in the documentary you were in this rainbow turban, which is amazing. So I was wondering, is it happening the same within Sikhs? I mean, do you know of any movement within Sikhism that have appropriated your dogmas, your doctrines and your scriptures, your beliefs and your faith, and they have readapted all of this into a new LGBTQ plus safe space?
So the key thing to note here, I think there are three key things to note here. So one is Sikh religion is a very young religion, and within the Sikh religion, so as I mentioned, so the texts do not mention homosexuality. There's no outright condemnation or outright acceptance of homosexuality. And so within the Sikh religion, and the discourse of, the focus on Sikhism is more on your spiritual connect with God. So within Sikh faith, I'll say, especially in India, there has not been a lot of discussion around around homosexuality. And so this whole whether so we are at a point, I would say, where we are at a very key junction within, if I may speak from a Sikh perspective, where now, because of the way things are within the world, we cannot ignore homosexuality or homosexual people. A lot of us are out and are coming out, or are wearing our sexuality and religion together, right? So we are at a very key point where it is now that from here we'll go ahead where by either having a very accepting or inclusive interpretation of Sikh faith, or having a very rigid interpretation. So we are at that junction currently, and so it is up to us, whether us queer people or the religious leaders, on how we want to move ahead. So like for other faiths, right, like Christianity or other established faith which have been here for a very very long period. So we I think we have passed that particular junction long back, and sadly we moved to a very rigid interpretation. uh, but within Sikhism we haven't reached that. We are at this very key junction, and so whether through this documentary or through my own wearing a rainbow turban, what I'm trying to do as well over here is initiate a dialogue, because within Sikh faith we have not had a dialogue around this topic. So what I'm also trying to do over here, either through the documentary, through my own participation at pride parades, as a out gay Sikh person, or through my rainbow turbans, through my articles, is basically start this dialogue, initiate this dialogue, and ensure that we have, when we start this dialogue, it's not only the homophobic voices that come ahead, or it's not just the homophobic voices that we are hearing, but also voices from the community, voices of inclusion, voices of how we can probably look at these texts or these themes, or and look at a very inclusive manner. Outside of India, there are some of the countries with a larger, outside of India, where Sikh population exists on a larger scale, is UK, Canada, and US. So outside of India, these three countries have a larger Sikh diaspora, and so especially in the UK, I know specifically there are groups which are focused on Sikh. They are queer Sikh groups, support groups, you may say, who have regular discourses around among their members, around religion and sexuality, who are helping their members accept their sexuality as well as their religion, and who are also initiating these kind of dialogues there, where I know particularly in UK, especially because I've worked with Sarbat in various indirect capacities. So where they have also initiated dialogues with gurdwaras, which are our religious uh, places, and where local gurdwaras are now very accepting of queer people as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we are at a very key junction where it is upon up to us in which way we want to steer this dialogue. So I think whether through this documentary or through my own actions, or through other probably documentaries that are being made currently outside of India as well, which talk around this topic, we are basically trying to initiate a dialogue. We are trying to basically ensure that voices other than all those homophobic voices are also heard, and we are able to start or initiate a dialogue around this topic, and yeah, and ensure that we do not go unheard of, and yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not that you haven't started this topic already, because we have existed forever, literally. And since the existence of Sikhism, which is, as you said before, relatively new religion, you've been there as well. You've grown up with Sikhism. You've grown up at the same level, at the same time and age. So it's not that you're not there, and you have created your identities around Sikhism. And I mean, I'm sure perhaps you need to grasp on this topic, because, as you said before, you're trying nowadays to reconcile both identities, being queer and being Sikh. But you need to go, I mean, as far as I understand, you need to go to the past as well and see in which point both discourses have collided, but we're not sure as yet in which point they have collided, and we have certain similarities. Because, for example, you've mentioned in the documentary this marriage between two genderless identities, which is fascinating. This is part of the queer Sikh history. This is part of it. This is part of your discourse. Even you mentioning in Punjab, for example, this macho identity. This is also part of your queer identity as as Sikhs, because nowadays the LGBTQ plus community, which I am part of as well, we're trying to eradicate, to pull down all these masculine cliches and stereotypes. And you being in this state where the macho is like the, you're trying to break down all these barriers, and this is also part of your history. So I mean, you've got a lot of work to do. As Sikh community have a lot of work to do, but you've got the grounds, you've got a background. Especially there is a queer Sikh background out there. And regarding what you were saying as well, which is very interesting about all the Sikhs living in the diaspora in either Canada or UK, I've been doing some research, and I ran into this YouTube channel, which is called, I've got it here, logo, interviewing Sikh queer people. And I think they're from Canada, these three people. There is a lesbian, a gay, and a non-binary, I think, if I'm not wrong.
I think it's from the US, no, Haido?
Is it in the US? I can't remember now if it is US or
Okay, so I have already watched this documentary.
Oh, it is in America.
Conversation, yeah.
Okay, so the US. Sorry, they live in the US, and they are narrating that now in Pride, during Pride month, in Sikh people mourn during the first weeks. I think it is the first 2 weeks of Pride, in memory of those who were killed in Operation Blue Star, which is also mentioned in your documentary. And this creates somehow new bodies of gay culture. We've been talking about these gay Sikh and gay identity. So do you know of any other peculiarities that are endemic to gay or queer Sikhism, apart from these, which is fascinating to me? I found it fascinating. These very few weeks of Pride that they're mourning instead of celebrating, the mourning because of these massive assassination in Operation Blue Star. So do you know of any other way of celebrating queer Sikhism?
So I did not understand your question exactly. What do you mean by celebrating queer Sikhism?
Yeah,
How?
I mean,
What do
for
you?
example, you wearing a rainbow turban,
Okay.
you're reconciling both discourses. Or during Pride, these Sikh people living in America, in Pride Month, instead of celebrating as Americans do, or we Western people, they mourn during the first weeks of Pride. And this is unique and endemic to Sikhism. So they are creating, you as well, wearing a rainbow turban, you are creating new ways of celebrating gay and being well queer and being Sikh. So apart from you wearing this arraignment turban and this discourse in American, this mourn discourse, do you know of any other way of celebration being queer and Sikh? Do you know of any other stories or experiences that you know of?
Yes, in fact, a lot of queer Sikh people, especially the younger ones, the younger generation, I'm talking about those who are like early 20s, in their early 20s. So they are these days very out, and on Instagram, I see them, I see their posts, or even for that matter, Amolak, who's there in the documentary. So he's he dresses up in a very androgynous fashion, and he's very out about both his identities. He's very strict. He goes to gurdwaras in those I mean, wearing his makeup and in a very androgynous fashion. And I mean, all of us who are queer and Sikh, we carry both our identities as we want. I mean, we don't necessarily let others define our identities here. So if I'm wearing a turban, I have other queer Sikh people these days who I follow on Instagram, who are very experimental with their looks. So they are doing drag. There are in fact Sikh people who are also doing drag, uh, uh, and on even on Instagram, people who post their photos with makeup and other things. So many of young, especially the younger Sikh queer people, they are owning up their identities. I'll say both their identities. So if you look up their social media accounts, Instagram post pages, you'll find them in some of the posts in a very traditional Sikh attire, and in other posts, them experimenting with their looks, them wearing makeup, with their letting their hair down, and breaking all these gender roles that one is supposed to adhere to. So yes, so different queer Sikh people, they are owning up their identities in their own ways. Both their identities here, I mean.
Okay, thank you. That's such a fascinating topic. I mean, because I'm really interested in my research on how to perform gender, and how to perform queerness, and so I couldn't help myself question.
No, that's a very pertinent question, and I mean, uh, it's been like, as I mentioned, I did my documentary over 5 years, and it was very hard for me to back then find people. But these days, I come across so many profiles of young people who are so comfortable with their identities, and I'm talking about Sikh people, in fact. You should definitely follow them or look up their Instagram pages, and you will be fascinated. Definitely, the way they are carrying themselves, the way they are posting, and some of them obviously also receive a lot of hate messages, but it does not deter them in any way.
Oh, that's fascinating. So, thank you. And one last question. I promise I won't bother you anymore. At the end of the film, and I thought that was quite shocking to me. At the end of the film or your documentary, you're talking about how other Sikhs are being reacted on Grindr and other dating apps, and I can see. I mean, I need more elaboration on that part because I thought, why so? Because I mean, you ethnically, if I'm not wrong, sorry if I'm wrong, you ethnically are Indian, so it is not because of race. It is probably because of religion. Then, so Hindus, you've got these Hindus against Muslim against Sikhs again, everybody else is a war raging against each other in India. So could you please elaborate a little bit more on that? Because I'm really interested in how you're being reacted on Grindr and all these dating apps.
Yeah, so one must, like, I think one basic thing one must know over here is that Indians are inherently very racist, for that matter. So we might cry about racism when we face that outside of India, but within India, Indians are very racist. And places like Grindr, they are, they are basically a whole, what should I say, a place where racism thrives, whether it's in the West or even in India. And in India, it's not just basically thing is discrimination does not just happen based on race. Here, the racism, and in fact, you will come across many profiles uh, on Grindr or other dating apps here, which basically discriminate based on your caste. I mean, you will find profiles which talk about that they will not date people from if they are not of a certain caste. You will find profiles which specifically mention their bigotry in terms of religion, that they don't want to date Muslims and things like that. And that is something that I have faced from time to time here as well. And I've in fact faced two kind of reactions. One is of being fetishized over here. So there are certain parts of the country where when I was basically people wanted to people wanted to satisfy their fantasies, and I was fetishized a lot. And then especially in the northern part, my experience has been totally different. There I face a lot of discrimination where they do not want to basically date Sikh people. Why is it so? Is it that is a little difficult for me to answer. People do not want to acknowledge that some of the and the reactions have been very sometimes funny as well. Some say they do not want to date me or as a Sikh person. They cannot think of me as a gay person and a Sikh person, uh, uh, because in their mind the two are incompatible. The two entities are incompatible, because the whole notion of a Sikh person that has been created in their minds, and it's also because of the way Sikh people have been portrayed in movies or in general in society, is a very macho of a very macho person who's very straight acting and other things. So they cannot imagine basically a Sikh person being gay. At other times, some people have even said to me that, oh, I respect Sikh people so much, and so I cannot date you or have sex with, because apparently having sex, you cannot have sex with people that you respect apparently, or it's just the way they tend to look at how sex is. And then other times it's probably purely because of bigotry, I'll say, where you come across such profiles which specifically say that, oh, we do not want, it's very similar to how people write that they do not want to date Asians, or they do not want to date old people or fat people. And so this basically adds up to that. I haven't had found a reason why specifically Sikh people. It's probably because I don't know, to be honest. But this is something that, yeah, I have come across a lot.
Yeah, that's incredible, because in my experience living in UK, I remember gay people saying, "I would like to have sex on, or purposely looking for some Sikhs on Grindr, because they wanted to have sex to real Indians with a turban and all." Just
Yeah.
like, oh my! I mean, you couldn't get any more racist, orientalist. So yeah, on the one hand, you're being rejected because you are racialized and you are religious, but then on the other, we've got these certain people who treat you as a fantasy or as a fetish or something like that. So it's terrible. So thank you, Sukhdeep, for all your answers. You've been so kind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's been
Ayana?
a pleasure. And I honor.
Hey, do you want to say something, or can I just make a
No,
last question?
just let me try to say what Sukhdeep was putting, that the documentary has been opening a space for the queer Sikh community to speak, right? I want you to talk about the reception of the documentary. I know it has gotten a lot of awards, and I want you to say about this, because this is important to people to know this small step that you have done or have taken it's a huge for the entire community. So I want you to talk about the reception of the documentary,
Yeah.
please.
So I've been sending the documentary to various film festivals, and it has. I do not have a list of all the names or the count currently, but I think over 14 or 15 film festivals it has already been screened at, and it has been selected for more festivals in the coming months as well. It has also won awards at many of the festivals, which in India here especially. And although most of the festivals have been held online this year, and this is something that I miss about film festivals is that when you go at a physical screening of film festivals, it's not just the movie that you're watching, but you also get to interact with the audience and to actually hear them out. So that is something that I've missed a lot because of COVID. But I was lucky enough that one festival, when the COVID situation was considerably maybe under control or down in India, so had a physical screening in March, the Aravali International Film Festival in Delhi, which I attended, and the movie also won the best best LGBT movie award in that festival. Where and because it was a physical screening, I was able to also interact with the audience, and a lot many of them came up to me, and even a member from the jury who was part of the jury, he came up to me and he said, "Oh, this is such a wonderful movie. We have never had such a, I mean, movie which talked about such an issue. I mean, of the Sikh and queer thing together." And they all loved it. And that has been a general reception that I've also heard from other film festivals as well, where the movie and in some of the festivals we have either got a special mention. In some festivals we have also won the best documentary or best LGBT movie award. And in general, whoever has seen, whether from Sikh or whether they were Sikh or whether they belong to the non-Sikh community, they have all appreciated the movie and congratulated as well for bringing forth this topic. And they have the one thing that have all said is that this is a story that they have never previously seen or heard of, and so this was very eye-opening for all of them. Yeah.
We here love it, so that's why you're here, and we want to say that you have done a great job. You know, like Hyde was saying, the scenes, because I have seen some odd documentaries on LGBTQ plus in India, but yours, and I have already told you this, it's well shot. You know, like the images, everything was well planned, thought to hit the target. That's what you wanted, you know, to spread the news and raise the flag. So we are here, and you have to accept us the way we are. And you have achieved your aim with this documentary. I know it was a long process. It took you like around 4 years, right?
Yes, 4 to 5.
Huh?
Yes, around 5. I'll say 4 to 5 years. Yes.
Yeah, and I think the documentary is also like a history of Sikhism. It's not just about the LGBT community, but it tells us the history of the religion through that entrance. You know, so it's amazing that because we learn about Sikhism in general, and with the point of view that you bring here to this LGBT entrance to the debate. So it's like a general, it's an overview of everything. It's a perfect. I really like it. Can I just finish one question? I still would like to ask you, Sukhdeep. So when you talk about that the well, we kind of know that the Sikhism is this, there is this military, this martial quality of it, and then you say that it carries this masculine, macho kind of culture. So I was wondering, Sukhdeep, how does that masculinity and the martial culture inflicts on the LGBT women, particularly like lesbian women, in two ways, like how do they feel it and how do they divulgate that as being also like incorporating the martial culture or in a way, and the transgender people. So how does that that need to embrace this masculinity as something part of the religion, if we can say that it is, but you say it is, right? At least it exists. If the religion imposes it on you, it's something. But the fact is that it is, no. So how can we deal how this conflict is lived on the bodies of lesbian women and the trans people too? Rather, I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if it.
Yes. So the whole what happens is with this masculine image or masculine society, patriarchy also becomes very deep rooted. And in India, generally, society is very patriarchal, and things are difficult for. If you're a woman, things are very difficult for you in India in general. It becomes doubly difficult if you are a queer woman, and as like if you, as in the also mentioned in the story, right? You have Punit who shares her journey. So even though if like if you have listened, I mean, in the documentary, she talks about this aspect that even though her family was kind of accepted her, in India, what happens is because of this whole patriarchal society, it becomes very difficult. Like if you are a queer woman, or if you have not got married, or if you do not want to get married, the society or your relatives in general, they start questioning your parents, your upbringing, right? So even if your parents are accepting, the society puts a lot of pressure. And for women in general, because of the patriarchal society, there are a lot of foundations. Basically, you are not a free woman in India. I mean, there's no free will for a woman. You have, if you are trying to basically go on your own path, you face a lot of abuse. You face physical violence as well, because the whole notion of this honor, right, of a family gets tied to women. And, so if a woman is not getting married, if she says she is queer, so it's not just her life, but the family takes it upon them that it will kind of bring shame to us if this goes out in the uh, other people get to know about it. So the pressure on women becomes immense, and mostly they are either forcefully married off, or they face a lot of violence, sometimes rape, such issues. So it's very difficult being a queer woman and finding and accepting family. I would say Punit has been like really lucky, and I'm so glad about that her family has been accepting. But even then, I mean, she talks about it how she also worried that what will the society say, or if I mean, at one point she breaks down and says that her parents wanted, or her mother wanted her to get married because of the ill health of her father, and if her father had died before she got married, people would start questioning her or her upbringing and things like that. So that's very difficult for women. For transgender women, it becomes even if, a lot more difficult because of these issues. Because especially for transgender women, so when you're a trans woman, and Ritika in the documentary talks about these issues. So one thing very unique for trans women in Sikh religion, and I've talked to at least one other trans person here, is the conflict that they have, which Ritika talks about. Because as a Sikh person, so when you're a trans woman, you basically grow up as a child as a Sikh male person. So when you are a Sikh male person, there's a lot of pressure for you to act masculine, and some of these things even I have heard, or even other people in the documentary have also said that they've heard from their family, where the family have rebuked them. Oh, why are you acting like in a girly fashion, or why are you doing such thing? Girls do that. So when you're a trans person, or a trans child, the family is trying to basically mold you into a very masculine image. Once you reach your adolescence, what happens is your beard start growing up, and as a Sikh person, you're not supposed to cut your beard or your hair. So there's a huge conflict that trans people, especially within Sikh faith, have between their religion and most trans for most trans people, this is the hardest part of their struggle, where they go through whether it is okay for them to basically in a way go against what your religion has taught you, which is accept I mean not to cut your hair and accept yourself just the way you are, or should they basically try and accept their trans identity and basically cut their hair and try to be more feminine, which is what their internal identity feels like, or their internal self feels more comfortable with. So this is a huge conflict, and because especially with trans people when they're trying to so what happens in a masculine society is also that if you are trying to the feminine is looked at in a way which is very lower than the masculine person, right? So women are looked down upon because they're feminine. So femininity in general is looked down upon in a society which is very mature, which is very masculine. So when you're a trans person, you're trying to basically act feminine, or you're trying to basically in a way accept femininity. So then there's a greater violence that you face because of that, because the society wants you to be masculine, and if you're trying to go against that masculinity within the society and trying to be more feminine, trying to accept trying to accept the femininity within yourself, so there's a lot of backlash that they face and a lot of violence that they have from their family, and sometimes it's because the family feels ashamed. They feel that the person or the child is bringing shame to their family name, and the society will not be accepting, or the society will kind of also make fun of the family. So what they generally face in that scenario is violence, a lot of violence. Like in case of Ritika, as she mentioned, what happened with her was very tragic, where the family, I mean, when she somehow tricks them in cutting her hair and trying to basically accept her trans identity, what she ultimately faces is horrible violence, where she was basically thrown into a drug rehabilitation center, where she was raped, she was drugged, and and we only include a very short part of her story, basically, where she narrated it to us. It was very horrible what she had to go through, and she had to go through it for months. She was there in the drug rehabilitation center for months, and where she was constantly raped, she was drugged, she had no, and by the time she left the rehabilitation center, her boyfriend had also faced violence, had been implicated by the police and things like that. So yes, trans people especially find it very very difficult and face a lot more violence than probably any other entities within Sikh faith.
Thank you. Oh, talking about the trans, especially Ritika, she was supposed to be here with us, but unfortunately, she was not here, and also Amlok. But there is one point in the documentary when the priest says that being transgender is fine, but homosexuality is a sin as long as you cannot marry, which is fundamental in Hinduism, right? The way he puts in the documentary. But we are wondering here, are straight transgender people allowed to marry? If not, we cannot see the difference between the two.
Sorry. So again, so a very interesting thing about India, or most of the religions in India, if you'll see, or for even for a fact, if you look at the response of Indians in general, whether it is our political class or society in general, is that transgender people are accepted, or I wouldn't say accepted, but they find certain kind of acceptance in society, and this is again and because of that acceptance, and the reason that this acceptance or tolerance exist is because trans identities in India have existed and have had a huge role. They for a long time, and which predates the British colonial period. So if you look at the Mughal period or even pre-Mughal period, trans identities have existed. The society, unlike the Western society, where it is like gay issues are more accepted these days rather than trans issues. In India, trans identities, there have been a lot of subcultures with a lot of very defined trans identities. So you had the Hijra culture, you have other cultures in Punjab or within Sikh. We know trans people as Khusras. So different cultures know or have accepted trans people or trans entities and I'm talking about pre-British period in different ways. So there has been certain kind of either acknowledgement of their entities or certain kind of acceptance, although it was not really assimilated inside the society, but they existed on the peripheries of the society at time. At time, trans people within the Indian culture or subculture also play certain roles, whether it is in terms of religion. So in India, we have, if you look at during the Mughal period, trans people or the whole Hijra culture evolved in a sense during the Mughal period, and in fact, trans people uh, occupied a very key position in the Mughal darbars. They were handed the securities of the female, and at times they also defended the Mughal kings during wars and other things. Similarly, there are sects or religions within Hindu religion. Trans people in certain subcultures play a key religious role. Then again, within India, trans people within the society in general, this has been a norm that whenever there's a wedding or whenever a child is born, especially male child, trans people or hijras will go there and do badhais. So there has been acknowledgement and certain level of acceptance of trans people pre British period, and somehow the whole colonial period also was not able to abolish this acceptance or abolish the hijra system, although it did cause a lot of damage, but it was not able to abolish it totally from the Indian culture. And so that is the reason why we see I would say that is a key factor in the response of the Granthi or the priest, where he says that yes, trans people are very much acceptable within the Sikh faith, or cites certain verses as well that trans people are accept. There's no issues with trans people; they are very much part of this nature, and they should be accepted. Accepted, but he finds it difficult to accept homosexual people, and this is where I again, as I mentioned previously, the lens through which we look at comes into play, right? So he looks from a different lens on trans issues, but when it comes to homosexuality or when it comes to same-sex marriages, he looks at it through a very colonial lens. So this I think is a key factor and a key reason why, if you look at trans rights in India have progressed a lot compared to, I would say, gay rights. And so even our parliament has passed a transgender rights bill or act. Trans people are being given, there are talks of assimilating trans people through reservations or through jobs or within educational educational institutions. So trans people or trans acceptance of trans people in India or South Asia, for that matter, is not an issue. The real issue here is about homosexuality, I would say, and that difference in responses is also something that you come across even the most homophobic religious people in India.
Yeah, we see they are more acceptable, but in reality, they are visible and invisible at the same time. You know, like. But I was wondering, Sukhdeep, because I'm talking about thinking the trans feminism in Brazil. I know I wanted to ask this question to Ritika, but I'm going to try to formulate with you and to see what you can say about this. because we know the concept of self definition. And with the concept of self-definition, we ended up having different identities within the trans movement. For example, in India, like you said, we have the Hijiras, but we know that the Hijiras are from the north of India, the culture from the north. Nowadays, we have a movement from the south that they self-identify as Tiranunkai. But I still inside of the Hindu tradition, the Hindu context. And what about in Sikhism? What do we know more about the trans in Sikhism? Do they have their own identity, like names, for example, Hejira, Tiranunkai, in the Punjabi language, creating this identity?
So within the Punjabi language, trans people mostly are known as khusra. The word that is used is khusra, not I mean, hijra is also popular, but Sikh people or Punjabi people, you'll hear them say khusra, not hijra or not trans. So the local word for trans people is khusra, and this is also a word which is very popular in or is widespread used in the Pakistan side of Punjab as well. So the identity, although I think I'm not really aware of how whether they follow similar traditions to how Hijra have like their gharanas and all. Whether within Punjab as well we have this gharana system or not. So sadly, I'm not really aware of that. But locally in the Punjab region, trans people, they are the term they use to refer to them is khusra. So that's the local word. I'm not really aware of the cultural aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you say that this is how people address to them. But is it an identity for them as well? They got it as an identity. For example, I'm going to give an example. In Brazil, we have travesti. Travesti is typical from Brazil. It's one identity within the trans community in Brazil. Because some people want to identify themselves as a trans woman or simply a woman. So we're talking about this identification. When you use this term, is it a self-identification or is it a term that somebody uses to refer to them?
This is, I believe this is a self-identification because before the whole Western notion of transgender issues came to India, mostly trans people would use these indigenous identities. So some would identify themselves as Hijras, right? So Hijra is also a self-identification. Trans people, because we did not, many of them did not have the vocabulary. Usually they would refer to themselves as Hijra, which is also a cultural identity. Similarly, there are Jogabpas. They call them, some trans people. And many of these terms also have their own cultural or different set of identities as well. So I mean, again, I would say I'm not really aware of this, but as far as I know, growing up, what I've heard, or in the few times that I've been to Punjab, I've seen. So khusra is also an identity very similar to how you have hijra, and that is something I mean, trans people probably as well refer to. But I think Ritika would have been probably a better person to answer that. Sadly, she could not join.
Oh no, okay, thank you. Yes, I got your point. Jairo, you have some more questions, right?
Yeah, but now that I'm thinking about yours, I'm thinking about your question about this new identity. Both Raji and I, we are very interested in decolonial studies, and how in many communities all around the globe, especially colonial identities and communities, prior to the European invasion, they understood sex as a completely different thing, more spiritual, more ecological, more cosmological, and all that. So I was wondering, because now that I'm thinking, for example, the Hijra community, as they are very much Hindu, Hindu connected or Hindu centric, they are
No, sorry to. So Hijra entity is a very unique entity. They are not really a Hindu entity. In fact, Hijra culture has more influence of Islam. So when a person joins a Hijra culture, Hijra has more influence of Islam because the whole Hijra entity, in a way, developed under the patronage of Mughal entities or under the Mughal period, under the Mughal rule, where they were also kind of accepted as part of the whole Mughal rule or rulers. They have had their harems were guarded by Hijra, so they occupied key positions. And so Hijra entity is not a Hindu entity. It's a unique entity which is more rather influenced by Islam. So when a Hijra person, when a trans person is accepted into a Hijra gharana or something, so there are Islamic rituals that they follow, and it's a mix of both Hindu and Islamic entity. It's not, and it's definitely not totally Hindu entity. Rather there are more influence. There's a more influence of Islamic entity in the Hijra culture. So, yeah, I just
And,
wanted to correct you
yeah,
there.
and I think the Tirununkai identity is more anti-Brahmanical identity as well. No, that's what they're uh, putting all this historical background together to construct their identity, anti-Brahmanical, anti-caste, and what's her name? Kalki. Kalki is doing a fascinating
Kalki
work
Subramanian.
in the South. And I was wondering if we have any Sikh trans like you. I know you're not trans, but like you doing this kind of work within the community. Is Ritika doing something for the trans community in the Sikh community?
So recently I've come across a very young trans person. So there are in fact many Sikh trans people. Some of them very vocal about their religious identity. Some not. Some very prominent Sikh trans people. So there's this. Sorry, I forgot the name. I think just I forgot her name, but she's very vocal. And she's featured on a lot of Punjabi news channels and YouTube channels as well. Her name is Jaspreet or something like that. I forgot her name. So she's become very prominent in her activism. And then we also have a very prominent Ghazal Dhaliwal, a very prominent Sikh trans person who's also a very famous scriptwriter in Bollywood. And in fact, her story was also telecast on a very popular show by Amir Khan here a few years back. So yeah, we do have Sikh trans people who are popular or who are well known. And recently as well on BBC Punjabi and other channels have also there's this Gidda group. Gidda is a folk dance performed by women. So there's a new Gidda group which consists of basically trans people who and they have become very popular. They are called to perform a dance during weddings and other functions. So their story has been featured in a lot of news channels as well, BBC Punjabi and others. Some of many of the members of that group are either trans or are male people who cross dress. So there are people or groups well known as well, trans people or groups. Yeah.
Thank you. Sukhdeep, as you come from the IT field, and how was it for you at work after you released the documentary? How was it with your, let's say, with your boss? Because here we have a lot of problems at work in terms of racism, transphobia, homophobia, and everything. I want to know, how was it for you at work? How was your colleagues, your boss saw your documentary?
So I don't really talk about my LGBT activism at work, and yeah. So and I've like recently joined a new company, and it's been like work from home, and so I haven't had a no one has got to know, I think, about my sexuality or my work. And I don't usually brag about my work, about my activism at work, because of various other reasons, not necessarily because of my I'm uncomfortable with my sexuality, but because of other reasons, because many of these companies have different policies which might conflict, or and other things. And obviously one reason is the homophobia one might face from you from the job, right? You never know. I would say I've been lucky. So usually I do not brag about my work, but people have come to know about my. But I'm not really closeted as well. So people have either guessed or have come to know about my sexuality in my previous jobs as well, and they have been really accepting. And they have also known about my activism. In at least two of my so this is my fourth job currently. So two of my previous jobs, my colleagues knew about my work, or got to know about my work, and they were really cool about it. They appreciated the work that I was doing in my current company. I've joined very recently in very different circumstances, so I don't think they know about it. And in my previous company as well, some of my colleagues had know about my work, so they have been accepting. They have really appreciated the work, but it's not something that I discuss very openly at my work. Yeah, because many of these companies have very restrictive policies, and again, you never know what is the reaction that one might face. So yeah.
Well, but now that you're becoming very famous with the documentary, because that's what you are, I know it's going to be very difficult to hide this excellent work or activism that you are engaged in.
So as I mentioned, I don't hide my work or my activism, but I don't necessarily talk about it or brag about it at my workplace either.
No, I understood it. But I was wondering how it was for you to deal with this, especially the profession that you have. You know, yeah, that's the most fashion professional, IT. You know, Mariana and Jairo.
Just to finish, you were saying, Rayana, that Sukhdeep is becoming very famous and all that, which is very true. And I just read something on Instagram this morning that said we people, because Sukhdeep, if I may, how old are you? 20 something?
No, I'm in my 30s. I
Oh,
recently
okay.
turned 33.
You look young then. Okay, so people on our 30, 20s, nearly 30, I'm nearly 30, we need to become the references to our young selves. Those people like you and me who grew up without any reference, we need to become reference for them. So I hope that you become popular and famous and a celebrity, so you can be a reference to all little Sikh gay people out there.
Yes, that's also one of the reasons, like one of the issues that I faced growing up, that there was no reference for me of another gay Sikh person. And so that is also the reason I decided to be more out with my identity as a gay Sikh person, and wear this rainbow turbans and other things, so that I'm visible out there, and so that young people who are probably growing up, they have a reference, or they know that there are other people who exist, and they do not face this whole dilemma while growing up.
Yeah, precisely. Even me, that I was, born in a more or less tolerant and open society, I didn't have any real reference when I was a kid. When I was a kid, the only reference I had was a trans woman very popular here in Spain called La Veneno, Cristina La Veneno. There is a TV show quite popular now on HBO called Veneno. It is become massive here and there. Even actors and actresses from Pose, do you know this TV show Pose? About the balls and all that?
Yeah, no, for the younger generation, I think they are going up at a very fantastic period, because in general, we have a lot of LGBTQ representation in popular media. So in social media, Netflix. I mean, wherever we look, there are so many references these days. One can look up to. It's not. I mean, something that was there when I was growing up, for that matter. Even if I talk about Indian society as well, so there's a lot of lot of LGBTQ representation in Bollywood movies, in our media, news media, and other things. So and that is also getting reflected in how more and more really young people, I'm talking about teenage people, who are either very out or are coming out to their families, or at least are very very comfortable with their sexuality. So I think it's these are very exciting period for them. At least they probably do not have to go through the same kind of period that we went through. But I totally accept we still have a long way of having a very diversified representation in our society, because mainstream media or popular culture will only show certain kind of people or certain kind of representation. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we are living in a moment where the younger generation, and I see that for my kids also, that they are really so much freed of so many things that we have been uh, we had to deal with in a different way in the past. And I really think we have like to work very hard to keep that and that to continue and to open, because the forces that we are seeing in the world, in Brazil and India and in many other places, are really trying to stop any of this of this movement now. So I think your documentary is part of it, because it's all about love and acceptance. There is nothing like, beyond that, or like even saying, when my first question was like, why don't you just like you know go out of a Sikhism and think about something else? And like the message is exactly the opposite. It's like, within what is given, we can still be all together, no? So that's the message that 3 years ago, I would say, like, the world is totally ready for accepting that and other messages, and let's move on. But we are seeing now like a very very retrocess governments and politics in the world, and we really need to be aware that there is the struggle for everybody. Like, it needs to move on, isn't it, Sukhdeep? And I'm very glad you are doing that in a very very sweet and powerful, but sweet and beautiful way. So I'm very glad uh, for that,
Thank you.
really.
Thank you so
And
And
much.
Sukhdeep, since I got to know your work and you, I have been spreading the word. I think the word of
Excellent.
mouth is the best. So
Yes.
I've introduced your documentary to Jairo, to Mariana, to other friends of mine, because when we study India, we only think of Hinduism or the Hindu culture, or maximum the Islamic culture, but we never go into the Sikh culture. Here, people are not even aware of Sikhism, right, Mariana?
yeah, that's real. That's real.
This
Yes,
is
I
Yeah.
know.
Even
Uh,
though there is a Gurudwara here in São Paulo, no, there's a
yeah,
tiny
it's
little
a
one.
recently one, but I
Yeah,
think it got
but
shut. I
yeah,
unfortunately I think it got shut, right, Jess?
yeah.
The
Oh,
water.
yeah.
no,
But
I think
yeah,
I totally understand and get what you're saying. So, and I think Mariana also mentioned that there's a whole. I spent like 3 minutes of the documentary initially introducing what Sikhism is, because I'm very well aware. It's
yeah.
not just like outside of India, but even within India. Not, I mean, people are not really aware about what Sikh faith is about, or what are its key principles. And outside of India, so I've not like really traveled too much outside of India, but there have been a few conferences which I attended, and some of the people over there weren't aware that I'm a Sikh, and they thought I was a Muslim. And even those who were aware that I'm a Sikh, they weren't really aware about what Sikhism is about, or what are the principles of Sikhism. And when I made this documentary, I knew that it was very important for me to introduce the viewer first to what Sikh religion is about, or what are its key principles, or how it has grown in a very as short period, like in a very short time, so that people watching the documentary have an idea about what is the context behind it. Because I knew this, if I have to show it to people outside, they should also be aware of about the context or what the religion is about. So that is the reason I when I was editing the movie, and I decided that I really need to have this narration, the 3 minutes narration in the beginning, so that I'm able to basically give our viewers or whoever is watching uh, a context about what Sikhism is before they can start to appreciate or understand the issues really.
Yeah, Sukhdeep, if I may, I think the when you talk about Sikhism under through the perspective of the LGBT community, you do something very important for us in terms of understanding and knowing the Sikhism through your point of view, and also when we going back to the religions, which I think is the main thing, right? Because you're saying people, we are all now. Uh, Children of God. So going back, when you interview the the priest, how can we say that, the guy, no, the leader from the religious, like the guru, but and you ask him like, no, so what's the problem, so why there is the prejudice, and he can't find the words to say. So he's like talking, and he doesn't say anything because he can't find anywhere in his religion something that justify why would some Sikh person have prejudice toward the LGBT community, because he can't validate that. So he talks and talks and he talks about other people, no, so that he talks about other religion, other, because he can't find. So the Sikhism you are showing us is like what you people are talking about. There is no barriers, there is no prejudice. You see, the guy who pretends to be, he can't justify himself because there is nothing in the religious corpus that proves or justifies any kind of prejudice. So what you're doing for for the sake of the Sikh religion as a whole is amazing, because you show you like that. And what Hairu pointed out, which came through my mind also, that the people in Canada, I saw some Sikh community in Canada talking about the Operation Blue Star, mourning the victims of that horrible episode of violence towards Sikhs. So that was beautiful too, because they were using a period where they could talk about themselves, and they are talking about the Sikh community. So like they are raising awareness for many people who don't even know that happened in India also. So we came knowing that through the LGBT community, whereas they could be talking about their other problems, but no, so they're using that space to talk about the community. So that's amazing, because we have a new entrance, not a new entrance, but an entrance to Sikhism, which is amazing, because shows like the what you've been saying, like that is the not a religion with a super angry God who is blaming everybody for everything like we do have here. It's a different concept of religion, and that doesn't have any scriptural justification for any kind of prejudice. And on the contrary, and we mourn our deaths, we we stand against the violence against the whole community as a whole, for the whole thing of a Blue Star operation. So that's amazing, Sukhdeep, because you're telling a story of Sikhism. You're not only telling the story of LGBT people within the Sikhism. You're saying the whole thing. That's how it is through our eyes. That's amazing, really.
Yeah, it's like what Chimamanda says. You are challenging the unique, the only one story. You're giving the other story, the other perspective of Sikhism.
Yes, I think as I mentioned earlier, I mean, we are. I feel that as Sikh people, we are at a very key junction, where we can either go it in a very conservative and homophobic direction, or in a very inclusive direction. And it's very important that we as queer Sikh people own up this conversation, and rather than just letting homophobic people with no justification define our religion in a very rigid fashion. So yeah, so that is also the thought behind it. And yeah, and coming back to like what Mariana was telling about the priest or the granthi not being able to justify himself. So that's been like something that I've observed as well. So the few times, like there have been 3 4 times when the highest body, Sikh body, has condemned homosexuality. They've never actually been ever cited any specific thing from our texts or from our scriptures. Their condemnation has been very general, like this is, I mean, what you would expect any homophobic or person to say or bigoted person to say, that this goes against natural laws. Man is supposed to marry a woman, produce children, and things like that. But never have they like, or for that matter, like within Christianity or Islam, there are at least the priests or those opposing this topic. They cite some instances, some stories, however badly misinterpreted those stories are, of Lut or Lot and other things. But within the Sikh faith, we do not have any such stories. We do not have any such text. And yet, and that is something that you, as you mentioned, you find it in the response as well. So they go on a very general rant of this being unnatural, this being immoral and things like that. But they are never able to justify their opposition based on anything concrete. So this is something that I've observed as well in the few times that even the Sikh body has come out condemning homosexuality or other such things. And and currently what I feel is their main opposition is towards same-sex marriages. They are very scared. The Sikh body seems to be very scared that people might start getting marrying in a gurdwara, and so they have ordered like strict instructions to gurdwaras worldwide that they should not be performing a same-sex marriage and things like that. In fact, recently there was, I don't know if you have come across this, in the US. There was news of a gay Sikh wedding, where the person is Sikh, and he married his same-sex partner in a traditional Sikh marriage ceremony, and that generated a lot of debate as well.
I know we are running out of time, but Mariana, can I ask the last question? That is something that we cannot let it go, and I think Sukhdeep will help us understand this situation a little bit better, because he's within the system. We know that Sikhism was idealized, thought as a casteless society, right? That's one of the principles that Guru Nanak thought initially, right? And Armatya Singh says that the caste system is in the blood of Indians.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
how do you see the caste system within the LGBT community?
Within the LGBT community, as you mentioned, so caste is in the blood of Indians here, and in fact, not just Sikhism, but in fact, I don't know if you're aware of it, or if you would be surprised to hear it. Islam and Christianity in India is also caste based. You have different castes. I mean, so these are two religions that originated outside of India, but within the Indian fold, there are castes within both Islam and Christianity. So we have Dalit Christians, and the Islam that is followed in India also is caste based. So you have different castes, and people won't marry within different castes even in Islam. And so within the LGBT community, casteism exists, or rather is thriving. So sometimes it is outright in terms of where people directly say, oh, they will not date scheduled caste people or Dalit people. At times it is more subtle in terms of the queer spaces where caste permeates itself in different ways, either through the way people talk, or through the way people react to when you bring up or bring on topics around caste or gender or caste discrimination. So within queer spaces, so there are, I mean, upper caste people or Savarna people who would shut down Dalit people or voices of Dalit people, or rather invalidate their experiences and tell, oh, this does not happen, or you are looking at it through a different angle, or oh, why are you bringing caste within queer movement? Queer movement is should only be restricted to queer movement, and there is you should not bring caste topics. But casteism thrives within the LGBTQ community, and that thrives in the responses, in the way people within LGBTQ behave, or in the way they respond to other people from different castes. So sometimes it is outright discriminatory, sometimes it is subtle discrimination. Yeah. But nothing in India is untouched from caste.
Well, unfortunately, we wanted to stay here chatting more because it's really important to have this kind of work that you have done. And we have lots of questions. We still have a list of questions, but we cannot move on. It's also lunchtime here and then dinner time there. But we want to thank you one more time for sharing with us all this knowledge, because one of the principles of the Bring Dark is to share knowledge, and knowledge has to be shared, you know. And what you are doing is amazing, and your work has contributed a lot to our association, to the aim of what are trying to spread in Brazil, different Indias. We know we have multiple Indias, but the Sikh India hasn't reached Brazil. Right now that people are learning about Ambedkar, for example, right, Mariana? Because they only know about Gandhi. Mariana is doing a great work. She's translating Ambedkar's book into Portuguese, because we don't have other references beyond Gandhi, vegetarianism, and yoga. And your presence here is extremely important to us. And this is going to be recorded. It's being recorded, and it's going to stay in our page, the Bring Dark page, and the YouTube, so anyone can access and understand more about the Sikhism, more about the LGBT Sikhs. And I pass the words to them too, so we can conclude this nice morning chat in this Pride Day. And Sasarikal.
And thank you so much for inviting me, and for I would like to thank all of you and the association as well for having this conversation. And yeah, thank you so much. And I'm so glad that I could be helpful, and this documentary is actually helping other people in ways I could never have imagined. Yeah.
Thank you, Sukhdeep. Thank you for your work, and I hope to see more from you in the future.
Thank you, hopefully, yes.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you so much. It was really nice to watch the documentary, even nicer to talk to you. And thank you, Rejane and Jairo. I always really have an excellent time when the three of us are together. It's never it's always really good space of learning and sharing and being friends, doing stuff together. I really like that. So we good together. And yes, let's keep in touch with us, Sukhdeep. With new things
definitely.
in mind, let us know. Let's talk. And for us, it would be really good to put the ideas in circulation with good people to create a good debates and be surrounded by good people. I think that's what we try to do, isn't it? So thank you very much, so much, really.
Thank you once again.
Pride to all of you and people watching on YouTube. Happy Pride.
Yeah, happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Do some gay things. I don't know, have a nice coffee or something gay.
Yeah, today is a very important day for everybody. And so that's why we decided to ask you to come for this special day, because you're the special person here in our association.
Yeah.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you. It was lovely talking to you all. Yeah.
Okay, let me end.
Bye.
Bye bye.